Okay, so let's begin. I'm here with Greg from an MGA called Ridge, who is based in Canada. It's a pleasure to have you here. Firstly, in the UK. Second of all, with us at Inslee. So yeah, pleasure to have you. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, thanks for joining us. It's good to have you here. And yeah, maybe we can start with a brief introduction of yourself.
Sure. Greg Markell. I'm the president and CEO of Ridge Canada Cyber Solutions Inc. We are a Canadian managing general agent. We started with a focus on cyber insurance, and we underwrite on behalf of Lloyd's syndicates. We've been at it since 2016. And we've been working with Inslee for a number of years in developing out our back-end platform, just in terms of policy management and data management. And we're integrating a whole lot of really interesting stuff and building things out. So overall, I started on the underwriting side and at a Canadian insurance company before moving over to a national brokerage where I became a partner, and then left there to help start up the cyber team at another large Canadian brokerage, and was there for about 18 months before getting the opportunity to start up Ridge Canada. And so the Ridge in Ridge Canada is Governor Tom Ridge, or Secretary Ridge, who in 2001, when the towers came down, George Bush Jr. tapped Tom on the shoulders to consolidate a lot of the U.S. intelligence agencies, and thus the genesis of Homeland Security. And Tom was the first person to lead Homeland, and it's been a wonderful partnership. We are Canadian-based, though. We are only operating in Canada, so our modus operandi overall is to really focus and help Canadian small, mid-sized businesses in their transferring their risk from a cyber insurance perspective. So we're very consultative. We try and help. We work exclusively through retail partners, retail insurance brokerage partners, and we try and be extensions of their sales teams and help them get to yes. And when we are successful in doing that, we are continuing to build our portfolio, and it's all on a risk managed basis, and it's been quite successful. And we've just moved into two new spaces where we're underwriting on behalf of some domestic Canadian carriers in the technology errors and emissions space, so a tech cyber combined product, as well as we saw the writing was sort of on the wall that cyber in general is a governance problem issue. Yeah, governance issue. And boards of directors are needing some help and in speaking security language. So getting to board level to really help manage and control cyber risk for Canadian organizations. And so we've also moved into the directors and officers space, and we've just launched that product as well. So pretty exciting times. We're launching new products, growing. We've got one of the strongest underwriting teams in the country, and it's I think we're in a very enviable position right now.
Definitely, yeah. That is a really helpful, I think, introduction on both yourself and on Ridge, and I think the provenance and the backstory as well is very, very important. It's kind of part of the company's heritage, if you like. So it's very, very good to know that. So I guess the next kind of general area or kind of focus after your kind of explanation of what Ridge does is kind of what leads you on to that next step. So if kind of cyber is kind of the core focus, or one of the focus areas, how can you then facilitate that to your customers who are the brokers? Now, and a very important part of that would be the underpinning technology which allows you to do that, or the software or the system that allows you to do that. So, what was the trigger or the kind of the intentional first point that kind of led you to actually search for software as a solution to either assist you with kind of underwriting or your overall MGA operation? Was there a moment, that was either too much admin or whatever it might be that kind of led to that decision? And what was that kind of process like?
Yeah, it's a great question. The genesis of us looking for a system was really around how are we going to be able to scale. We have this glut of underwriting talent in-house, but how do we make sure that we're supporting our underwriters in their decision-making process? And how are we looking at things long-term from a cyber perspective in order to be able to continue to write profitable business on behalf of our cover holder markets and the syndicates that we represent? And this is exclusively on the cyber side, but it does apply to all other lines of coverage at this point. But we looked at everything, and we were operating out of a self-made Azure environment, and it would have just been very difficult to scale. Insurance is a very regulated industry, and we try and be leaders in terms of we get our audited statements we get our books audited every year, not just by our Lloyd's syndicates that are back us, but also by public auditors. And we just want to make sure that we are a very secure, and governance is very important to us. Our board is very, very a lot of horsepower behind it, and it's doing the right thing and making sure that we're above board, but being able to really dissect and look into the data that we're creating on a day-to-day basis. With cyber, we're coming out of what's called a hard market, which is where the supply of your capacity is at much less than the demand for the product. And so we were testing the elasticity or inelasticity of the cyber product itself overall, not just in Canada, but globally. And when we were looking at it, at Ridge Canada, we've always asked a little bit more questions. Fortunately, we have some very understanding and very supportive retail broker partners that, we value the relationships immensely. And so for us, it's about being communicative and giving people just what we're seeing across the entirety of the market, what controls are working, what's effective for Canadian companies, and where Canadian companies are a little bit, not quite ready for risk transfer. And so we looked at that, and we knew pretty early on that data management was going to be a very, very paramount and required element if you wanted to write in a sustainable way, in a profitable way, cyber insurance. Our underwriters need to have visibility on what's going on sector by sector, geography by geography, even though we're only operating in Canada, but province by province, looking at, okay, where are controls up to speed or where might they be lacking? And so that was really what we were setting out to do. One, being able to scale, but two, really being able to empower our underwriters to continue to make good selections in terms of risk and staying ahead of where we were seeing market movement. And that is really the catalyst for us getting into using a specific software for our day-to-day management.
Yeah, that's really interesting because we get kind of a lot of people in general who cite kind of appetite for growth, and scalability is one of the main reasons for using software. So it's encouraging to hear that. Obviously, from your perspective, it was quite a similar approach. And just in terms of before you started using a kind of Inslee's software to kind of help facilitate that growth. Were you using any software or solution before that? Or how was kind of, you've also cited that kind of data management was really important. How was that kind of before the current software or solution works as it is?
It was a litany of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So it was not going to be sustainable long term. The data entry requirements were going to be an issue. So we knew we needed to make a move. And it wasn't just as a result of our backing markets telling us that we were going to have to make a move, but the sophistication and scalability that it was going to bring with it was where we needed to be and where we wanted to be. And so, we actually hired a third-party computer engineering firm to run a diligence process for us just on what was out there. And what we were using previously, we had built out of Azure, right? And so in the Microsoft environment, which was working great for us. But if we wanted to get to that next stage and that next growth and evolution of the business itself, we needed a solution. And so we set out, had a diligence process that was, I think it was a few months.
Requirement gathering and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We got scoping, statements of work, looked at everything, and actually hired the computer engineering firm to take a look at the underlying base level of code on it. And so what we were looking for was something that was going to be flexible and scalable, but also what we would be able to integrate because there's a number of tools and a number of partnerships on the cyber insurance side that we're bringing to Canadian companies. And so how do we potentially integrate? How do we leverage the data that we are collecting to help Canadian businesses, if they want it, get to a state where they are relatively secure? It's secure enough at least to transfer the risk. And how do we work with our broker partners to do that? So always the one thing that we set out to do is continue to keep client and broker in mind. I spent too many years on the brokerage side to forget about it. And so when we know
firsthand what it's like.
That's basically exactly it. When we were looking at the systems designed, we looked at, okay, what is going to bring benefit to our brokerage partners? What's going to make us work better and smarter and faster? But two, what's going to bring long-term benefit to our retail and insurance broker partners? And ultimately, how are we going to get and help Canadian clients? Because small, mid-sized business runs Canada. It is the lion's share. Canadian economy is built on the back of small business. And so how do we trade? How do we do that better than anybody else while still not sacrificing any of our underwriting philosophies, our control requirements, and how do we get product into Canadian company hands better, faster, and more efficiently?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And a lot of people, when they kind of walk into or start a conversation around software, they'll always have something in the back of their mind, which is maybe like kind of ROI focused. But I think there's a few things that you've mentioned just there, like security, a better customer experience for your brokers as well, that probably sometimes even takes precedent. So would you say that was the case when you were having those conversations, or did you still have kind of some sort of ROI in mind, maybe speed or kind of cost or something like that?
Yeah, I think scale, realistically. If we're able to write more and issue our policies and our product. Ultimately, the contracts that we're writing is our product faster, and our underwriters would then, it's looking at time as a resource for our underwriters as well. So if they can do more in the time that they're working at Ridge Canada, then everybody does better. And so trying to leverage the software component to help get policies to brokers immediately, invoices out immediately, and now working on real-time integrations from an accounting perspective so that we, we're well above audit standards, and we're doing the right thing overall. It was absolutely paramount that we did that, and and that was where we set out on our journey with Inslee.
Yeah, that's really good, and that kind of goes back to having the original intention of scaling and kind of embedding that in what you wanted to have as the end outcome. So that's I'm always my board knows me as a very frugal person, but it's bottom line is key, and we know that a system will add efficiency, add scale, add size, and really help with that time element of things at the end of the day, and that makes an immense impact on overall profitability. 100%. And if an underwriter at Ridge or anywhere else could kind of be empowered to do something or issue a policy in much less time than they would in a very manual way, then obviously that's of paramount importance as well, right?
Yeah, but also being able to, we pride ourselves on being good communicators.
Yes.
I think that there's an element of insurance, and it is very relationship focused, and it cannot be forgotten. Our underwriters are not keyboard warriors.
They'd much rather pick up the phone, have a conversation.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference. I think being able to communicate with our retail partners, and so if we're seeing trends throughout our portfolio, we want to be able to distill that down and share with our broker partners what we're seeing, because it may have an impact on their client base. Nobody does all of their cyber exclusively through Ridge Canada. So if there's an opportunity to be better communicators as a result of the data that we do have and we are bringing in and growing, then it's incumbent upon us to continue to be better communicators. And so looking at the data and really being able to drill down and effectively quantify some of the trends that we're seeing overall was really one of the key elements that we were looking at when doing our partner selection on the software side. So harnessing and taking control of our own data was massively important in that decision-making process.
Definitely. And that kind of brings us on really well to kind of the next point or area, which is when you were evaluating or looking at different software providers, obviously that data management side you've said is kind of imperative. But was there anything else that particularly made Inslee a good fit when you were open to sourcing a software solution? So obviously data was one of them, but was there anything else that was like an aha moment or something like that?
Yeah, I think for us, when we originally set out, we wanted to be flexible, and we hired a very good firm to help us understand what we didn't know. And that goes down to just the programming language that things are done in, the open capabilities from an API perspective to really be able to build and grow overall. Because insurance software, it's like accounting software, like finance software. It's very good at what it does. But overall, there's no, well, there's a couple of companies that are trying to provide a one size fits all solution. And that wasn't going to be the case.
Especially when you're a specialist, kind of, you focus on a specialist area.
Exactly. We are hyper specialized, we are, which is a blessing and a bit of a curse at times in the overall, dev cycle and everything else, because we understand what we're trying to do and trying to accomplish. But we know we have to work with our developer partners, because not everybody is an insurance expert either, right? And so we wanted to make sure that we were working with people that, one, we liked. It's an important thing as well.
Definitely, yeah.
But just having the flexibility to be able to move the needle on certain elements of the system and the software, but while being open and being flexible. And what I mean by that stretch is like the configurations that we've made into accounting-based software. Being able to integrate and API in, but at least in the interim before having that API done, be able to generate the reports so that we can do batch uploads on a weekly basis, so that we can do all of our reconciliations and overall get as close to real-time views of our books as possible. And so that was the first one, trading with Lloyd's and Lloyd's Canada. Lloyd's Canada has a specific trading platform that is API ready. So if we are looking at real-time reporting, and again, we're able to query our data and slice and dice it the way that we need to and visually represent that via different reporting structures or anything else, that's not just good for our brokers, but it's also good for our markets. And so we can look at everything, and it just, having that built out saves so much time from an administrative standpoint, and also reduces the potential for error. If you're only doing data entry once and it is direct from the source, then any mistakes that are made can be corrected very quickly. They can be spotted very quickly. But that element, when it comes to our capacity providers, they get full-time visibility of what we're doing and how we're growing. And so we like to be very good communicators, and that applies to both our brokers, but it also applies to our backing markets. And that element of visibility that we are bringing to the table with our data is really imperative to long-term strategy in terms of portfolio management.
Exactly. So the future will probably bring conversations such as, how can we use data to our advantage, rather than retrospectively maybe asking yourself, is the data correct? Because you've kind of removed that as like a failure point, right? Like the rekeying of data, for example. If it's done once and it's done properly, then you can kind of push forwards from there onwards. And of the products that are currently live and trading, what was your experience of implementing those products, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we went in pretty eyes wide open. The development cycle has been a little bit longer, but I think that seems to be the case with just about everything. Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't snap your fingers and just automatically have a completely specialized, customized trading platform implemented with everything connected and working. Like, that just doesn't exist. We knew that. I think the life cycle of our customization and our build out has been a little bit longer, but we're getting there, and the future looks very promising on it. Again, looking at how are we going to be able to really take control of our data again, overall. And that with our, again, we ask more questions. You go back 5, 6, 7 years in the Canadian cyber insurance market, And you would go to trade shows and the banners were up were like, get cyber insurance with 3 clicks. That's not sustainable. You need to
The
be
more
able to.
information you have, the better.
Exactly. And so for us, as we collect it, looking at it, analyzing it, and really looking at, okay, where are these elements, where are these sectors needing some support? Because that allows us to go out and look towards Canadian solutions to security issues that Canadian companies are having as well. So because security tools, there's no silver bullet, and there's no such thing as 100% security at the end of the day. So how do we help and how do we really position ourselves by leveraging the data that we're collecting? And the reinsurance community and insurance our backers have, I think, really appreciated that. We can give visibility now with this. Our data set is richer. We can look at it and we can actually report it back in a much, much more efficient and better way. So if we're asking the questions, it's incumbent upon us to use the questions. Otherwise, why are we asking them in the first place? So we've really, really tried to hone in and zero in on exactly what is needed from an underwriting perspective that helps us move the needle when it comes to either pulling something into our portfolio or not. We're still, the reality is, I was quoted a number of years ago by one of the magazines saying 60% of Canadian businesses are not ready to buy cyber insurance. Our declination rate is right around that number. But that's, in essence, an element of just the lack of proper security and hygiene. And so, again, if we can communicate what we need to see, and we're asking the questions that are related to those elements of security, it's incumbent upon us to use that in our decision-making process and to use it better than anybody else out there. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without software.
Definitely, yeah. That's a really kind of powerful trail of thought, and I think from a business benefit perspective, you definitely kind of made it very clear that visibility on the data side is super important. But not only that, it's also passing that visibility on to your customers, who essentially the brokers. What's maybe on that trail of thought, or following up on that, what do you think has been the most useful part or piece of that data visibility for the actual brokers themselves? What's one thing that you've maybe provided or they've maybe asked for, which is for them being kind of like, a wow moment or a wow factor, and that could probably kind of give you the cutting edge over competing MGAs who can perhaps maybe not offer that level of visibility? What would you say is
well, that's what we're working on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still working on that. Right now, for us, it's the integrations and the visibility from an accounting perspective, as well as the reporting side into our backing markets has been the focus. I'm excited for the next stage where we are leveraging that to really create custom materials for our retail partners. Yeah. And being able to do that. But I mean, the reality is we've been in the platform for just over a year now. So we're still having a BPO firm help with some of our data entry from a legacy perspective. So we're still adding to the richness of the data set as well. So as we continue to do that, and as we continue to renew policies within the system, the visibility on that data already exists. So in force, we've got access to it, but we also want to be conscious of looking at everything that we have for the last 8 years. So how do we do that? And that's going to take time. There's no secret solution for absolute uploading of yep. of really rigid old applications that may be in Word, they may be in PDF, but they also may not be harmonized against our question set And, you know, there's still a need for the human touch on the underwriting side. That's never going to go away. You know, leveraging some of the AI capabilities that will present themselves in the future is great. Those are tools that are just going to make our underwriters more efficient and better. So I've said many times to our team, you know, the computers are not going to take your job. Don't worry about it. and you know, I think that sentiment is echoed by a number of our broker partners who still want to talk to someone. They want to understand. They will, you know, we're learning every day as well. And if that stops, we're in trouble, because security evolves at breakneck pace, because the hackers and the threat actors are very advanced and they're sophisticated and it's organized. And so it's incumbent upon us to look at, okay, what is the threat and how is it going to impact Canadian businesses, and how is it going to impact our portfolio overall that we manage, you know, and on the capacity that we manage on behalf of other companies. And so when we're looking at product development, when we're looking at where the market is, when we're looking at how is it going to operate, factoring all of these elements in becomes very, very important, especially for the sustainability and long-term view and vision of what we're putting into the portfolio.
Definitely, yeah. And that kind of sustainability piece is very important when you're kind of looking ahead at what's to come as well. So on that note, it might be quite interesting to ask about kind of the future aspirations for Ridge as well. Kind of which direction do you kind of see yourselves heading in? And, you know, is there any plans to maybe expand outside of Canada or to other product lines? What would be your take on that?
Well, we've just launched the technology, errors and emissions, and the directors and officers lines. So we're excited to get those into the platform. We're excited to grow in those lines and in those sectors. We've got a great team that's really well known within the Canadian industry and has a track record of success. So I'm very excited to work with these teammates and really grow this together. Where I see things going, I'm not really going to comment on geographic expansion plans, but at the same time, we're a Canadian-focused company, and there is still a lot of work to do in Canada. Canadian small, mid-sized businesses deserve security solutions, and they deserve the ability to transfer the risk at certain maturity points. So we want to work on what we have in front of us, because it is greenfield. There is a lot of opportunity, but there is a lot of work to do at the same time. So we are focused, and we are pretty steadfast in that. Overall, I think what I'm excited about is focusing intrinsically within Canada, the procurement process overall, and working with brokers. How do we help our brokers become more efficient in selling and distributing this product? You know, it's no secret that the level of data entry across the board is really material. Yeah. So we still need the data, because otherwise we can't make the underwriting decisions that we're needing to make. So how do we reduce that, which will increase the time savings at our retail partner level? So excited to focus in on, again, some of the integrations and capabilities. Having been a broker for a number of years prior to starting Ridge Canada, the word portal is a bit of a swear word, because for a retail broker, it's, okay, we'll give you access to a portal. So thank you for doing our data entry for us, and we're not going to pay you anymore. So what's the benefit? So I think the brokers don't need portals. They need dashboards. And you still need to be able to transact in the old-fashioned way, but to give an option of that seamless flow of data that empowers underwriters to make decisions faster, but also empowers brokers to get their sales life cycle shortened significantly. And if we can do that, that's really, really exciting. And again, just integrating additional tools within that we will be able to use that help us become better risk selectors and overall more profitable underwriters.
Awesome. And then two last questions, which kind of ask the same thing, but for different audiences. So say, for example, if there's me or someone else out there who's a Canadian broker, let's say, for example, and they're looking to partner kind of with an MGA, what would be, in maybe a few words or sentences, what would be the kind of the main reasons from your side for them to kind of consider a partnership or a relationship with Ridge? You've mentioned quite a lot of things in our conversation, but if you had to cherry pick maybe two or three things, what would they be?
Yeah, I think it's about collaboration, really. We value the relationships that exist. Ultimately, what needs to be focused on is end client. So if a retail broker, a partner of ours, needs help, we are there to give it. We're there to help however we can. And again, we're not trying to be all things to all people. We are focused. We are very product specific. The core pillar is cyber, but security at the end of the day, again, is a governance related issue. And so the product development side that we are looking at from a risk transfer perspective is related to overall governance and specialty insurance. So I think partnership, and when people are selecting partners, there's a number of things that come into play. Price is always going to be an issue for end client, but it's really about delivering value to end client. So being able to showcase and really communicate why certain risk decisions are being made. I think that will be valuable to our retail broker partners, and not just being a, black box of information with one-page marketing materials that are so generic that they're not that helpful, right? So I really think it is about that level of communication and sharing, and having visibility on our data makes us better communicators.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to flip that question on its head, or to kind of reapply it to an MGA audience, if there were prospective MGAs kind of out there who are looking to maybe digitalize their processes or find a software solution, what advice would you give to them if they were in kind of the exploratory phase of searching for something? If they were quite early on in that process, what would your words of wisdom be to that audience?
I think ultimately people need to be clear in what they need from software. For MGAs, the prospect of just integrating or launching something new and getting full visibility on the past is unrealistic and shouldn't be an expectation. I think patience is going to be a key for everybody. A lot of the developers aren't insurance experts most of the time. We were drawn to Inslee because of the insurance expertise overall and the experience there. And that has saved us a fair bit of time overall. But product development and life cycle to roll out and development time, it takes time. But you want to get it right. And you get it right the first time, and you nail the foundation, It's setting yourself up for scalability and for success. And again, we are hyper focused and specialized with three product lines. So looking at, okay, what do we need in each of these product lines, but how do we correlate all of our data that we are collecting across each product line as well? Because there are overlaps and similarities. So if we can focus on efficiency on the overall within the overall underwriting process, we're going to have a whole lot more happy broker partners, because we're not asking a client the same thing 3 different times or the same thing 2 different times. We're asking it once, and that's what we need. And then once a client is in the portfolio, it's maintenance. It's, were there any changes? Is there anything that you need this year? But being able to produce that element for our broker partners ultimately will save clients time. And so I think for other MGAs that are MGUs that are looking at it, I think my advice would be, again, never forget about client.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the end of the questions. But Greg, really appreciated you being here with us today. Would you have any kind of final comments for the audience or anything else?
No, thank you for having me. It's it's always a pleasure seeing the team at Inslee, and seeing the people that make all of this really cool cloud native stuff happen. Because for us, it's, again, there's much like insurance, there's an element to relationship at the end of the day that is it's not lost on us, and it's respected. So thank you for your time.
Awesome. No, thanks a lot. It's good to have you with us as well. And thanks to our audience for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.